John and I were delighted to meet Dr Hussain Al Zubaidi, a TV doctor, the Royal College of GPs physical activity champion, a very good triathlete in his own right, and the Parkrun health lead. He also advises Swim England as a medical advisor, and somehow still manages to fit in being a GP one day a week. A fascinating and personal discussion. Hussain tells us he's faced his own health challenges and how he himself used physical activity to turn his life around to great effect. Now he's leading the way GPs want to utilise physical activity to improve people's lives. And in this session, he explains how we, as leisure operators, can link effectively with GPs, a bit of the holy grail. He also has a superb answer that blew us away to the question of whether the sector should remain sitting in the DCMS or move to health. Lots to glean from this one. Please enjoy. Well, welcome, Hussain. Thank you very much, and welcome to the Conveners podcast. I'm Andy. This is John. So a little bit in awe, to be honest with you, on a number of fronts. To be honest with you, as an ex-triathlete, never reached GB age group like you have, but also the fact that you host the Movement Prescription podcast, very successful, one of my favourites. Appreciate that. So yeah. To start off, nice and easy to start with, but can you tell us a little bit about your career today, and also the role that physical activities played, both professionally perhaps and personally throughout that time as well?
Hi guys, yeah, thank you for having me on, very much appreciate it. So I am a GP based in Warwickshire, and sort of throughout my career it's had different stages, but if we think about where physical activities started, that was about, let's say, 2018. Prior to that, I was very much inactive and unfortunately struggled a lot with my weight and struggled a lot with my lifestyle. So much so that it was actually, there was a point where I was diagnosed with something called fatty liver disease. Okay. This is where fat infiltrates the tissue of the liver and it can start to cause inflammation within the liver. And I was picked up in a blood test initially, and then I was asked to go for an ultrasound scan of the liver. And that's when I was sitting there on the couch and the sonographer was doing his scan, he told me, you know, you've got one of the fattest livers I've ever seen. And that was not the league table that I wanted to be on. And yeah, it was that day that I realized I had to do something, but exactly what that would look like, I wasn't sure. And it's a shame because for most healthcare professions, when I say most, 99.9%, we don't get any training on physical activity, on nutrition. You know, lifestyle in general, you get about 5 hours in a 6-year medical degree. And so I just wasn't equipped. And you think that surely out of everyone, healthcare professionals should be up there with their knowledge around movement and nutrition and sleep. And so I decided that in the same way that I'd spent years trying to become as good a master as I could on pharmacology and the medical model, I wanted to do the same thing for lifestyle, to try to get myself out of this hole. And there's many different things that I'd done, and I did plenty of reading. But in terms of my relationship with physical activity, it took going to a local parkrun to my surgery that really ignited the flame. We were at a practice meeting where the local parkrun event team had come in and just explained about what Parkrun was. And the Royal College of GPs at the time, collaboratively with Parkrun, had launched the Parkrun Practice Initiative, which is just a way for the practice and the event to collaborate. And so I went along, and my wife had started running a couple of years, but up until that point, I normally just waved her off from the front door and wished her well. But I went to this Parkrun, and the first 400 meters, I was like, do you know what? I'm pretty good at this running. I'm pretty good.
The wheels came off.
Oh, it was I was doing great. Yeah, and then unfortunately the next 4,600 meters were absolute hell. And like, I was passed by everyone. Someone with 2 kids in a buggy, a 70-year-old gentleman, like everyone and anyone passing by. And I, after about one vomit and 17,000 stops later, I finally completed that 5K. But the memory that I have not was of the suffering, but it was of the community of movement there. Like everyone was wishing me well. They were dragging me to the line. People that didn't know me, they'd never met me before, yet they were waiting around to just help me cross that line. And that just gave me the impetus to be like, I need to do this better. And as weeks went on, like it wasn't like the next week I suddenly transformed. Like it took years, but it was just little bits on little bits, just improving my kind of knowledge around physical activity, starting off with running. Then I tried cycling. Then I got into strength training. Then, you know, I started doing a bit of yoga and flexibility, and it just slowly layered on top of each other. And something that I used to really fear and be concerned about, because I didn't know anything about it from an academic point of view or from a personal perspective, now is like a cornerstone of my life. I couldn't think of it without it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's transformational. I mean, it's a terrific story. And what struck me is this notion that Andy and I are working on around seeing physical activity as part of a preventative health agenda, and so that we can seamlessly connect better with primary care. And you know, what are the obstacles that are in the way for us to successfully do that? Because they're certainly there. You know, from your testimony there.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are a number of barriers. You know, when I spoke with my GP, who's absolutely top GP, hardworking, but when I asked him, like, what can I do about my fatty liver disease? And also I'd been diagnosed with high blood pressure. They said, your family have it. It's genetic, you know, we'll just see what we can do to manage it, and it shouldn't impact your life too much, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's not what I wanted to hear. And when I started doing research into seeing the impact of physical activity, like, the science was saying that I could reverse this. You know, I didn't have to live with these conditions. I didn't just have to take medication to try to keep it at bay. You know, I was only, I think, 25 or 26 at the time. Like, I was young. I didn't want a long-term condition from the get-go. And unfortunately, that's the narrative, that we're taught. You know, a lot of clinicians, they don't realize the benefits that good nutrition, that regular movement, that good sleep has on health. And that is actually more profound, because yes, I reversed my fatty liver disease. Touch wood, liver's healthy now. Well done. Yes, I reversed the blood pressure, but physical activity brought a number of side effects. You know, improved confidence, less anxiety, just joy of movement. Like it's something in each day, no matter what happens in the day, how tough it is, knowing that you've got that half an hour or 40 minutes, whatever it is, going for a walk or a run or a swim, like that can be like a lifeline. Often, I heard the term of mental health first aid station. You know, you can think of that walk as a first aid station. If you're having a difficult day, yes, it's not going to solve everything, but it's going to make it better. And so I think we have a big barrier, not just in education, which we need to do, but we need a barrier in perception.
Yeah.
We need to realize that actually when we look at the evidence, physical activity stacks much higher than pretty much any intervention we've got.
Yeah.
And across such a wide range of conditions. That's another thing. Like, unlike smoking, where you kind of know when to bring it up because there's sort of specific conditions where this will be really helpful to talk about reducing smoking. Yeah. I can't think of a condition of my head where it wouldn't be benefited from physical activity. Yeah. I can't think of one where it wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's that power that we need to start to utilize in our armory. Yeah. But more and more are. From a positive note, although still the majority don't yet have that awareness, more and more clinicians, in particular the younger ones, they're starting to realize that, do you know what, we need to just focus on the basics first. The rest is seasoning that we should be putting on top when that hasn't worked, but we should be doing the basics right before we try to add in anything else.
Yeah. So some of this passion that's clear when we've met on Teams call recently, that came over, it's come over again today. So before we get on to the sort of active practices and things like that that you told us about previously, this has now led to you sort of, this passion is sort of gone into, you've got a formal position with the RCGP, I think, and with Parkrun, is that right?
Yeah, correct. So at the Royal College of GPs, I'm the Lifestyle and Physical Activity Champion, and with Parkrun, I'm the Health Partnerships Lead. And, you know, both of those roles really passionate about. Like, in terms of the Royal College, it's about how do we increase awareness amongst the primary care staff around lifestyle and physical activity. Yeah. There's been a number of things that we've done. We'll come on to Active Practice Charter later, but even as recently of this month, we released a framework for what a GP with an extended role in lifestyle medicine means. Kind of give them a direction as to what training they need to require, what kind of practice they do, because we want to make it clear that we need passionate advocates across the networks in the UK, not just incorporating it into their work, but making this a priority. Just like we have GPs that are specialists in menopause, in skin health, etc. We need this in terms of lifestyle and physical activity. And it's been great to see the interest. You know, there's a number of GPs that have reached out and said that this is exactly the way that they wanted to practice, and it's more aligned to their values. And so that's sort of work that we're doing through the college has grown. You know, it started in 2017, and year on year, it's becoming a bigger and bigger component. In terms of Parkrun, as the health partnerships lead, Parkrun is just a great way to start your physical literacy. You know, for people that, you know, don't know where to go, what to do, how to do it, just to get them moving a little bit, it can inspire them. Like at the moment, probably my favorite part of the routine is probably strength training, but Parkrun got me into that. You may not think how that's logical, but it's all around physical literacy. As soon as you become confident at going, oh, I took this up and got a bit better at it, suddenly when you approach something else, like taekwondo or strength training or going to the pool, you just understand the process. It's not the same, but you understand the process of what it takes to slowly look to master and improve at something. And so, I'm really passionate about working with Parkrun and helping those in particular that don't feel like the Parkrun material. And I'm going to use that word because a lot of patients, when I speak to them about Parkrun, they go, oh God, I'm not Parkrun material. And I need to explain to them that everyone is Parkrun material. You know, we all are going to start somewhere, and don't compare yourself to others because it can be really the thief of actual advancement. So what I try to do at Parkrun is look to see how we can embed it as a social prescribing option so that various healthcare professionals know exactly how they can use it. Because for some, it may be the older patient that is lonely, that just needs to connect and maybe volunteer at the events to start off with. For others, it may be those that have had a bit of a heart scare and they need to improve the cardiovascular health. Perfect. There's so many different ways that you can use physical activity beyond the pure physiological impact that it does, because it's wide-reaching.
No doubt they would say, oh, I'm on exercise referral, I'm not leisure centre material. I'm sure they do.
Absolutely. No one ever feels like they are what is required, but in reality, like how you come is exactly where you start. You know, we all have a different road, but the road is there nonetheless. You may start at point A while someone else starts at point E. It doesn't matter. Just focus on where you are. Like where I started, I genuinely couldn't run more than 400 meters without stopping. You know, now, like, I once in the middle of COVID, just because I had nothing to do, I just ran 80 kilometers. I literally just ran it on my own. There was no event. I just ran. Just because I wanted to see what happens. When do the wheels come off? They came off big time. They came off really big time at around 80 kilometers. But it's that, once you can open that belief, and I think that's what can be really rewarding as a healthcare professional, when you see the patient 2, 6 months, 12 months down the line, and suddenly the belief in themselves has changed. It has massively changed. They're no longer limiting themselves so much. And I think that can be one of the most rewarding things as a healthcare professional. You haven't done anything. You have just enabled the patient to open up, to allow themselves to take on some of these challenges.
And I think it's this thing around sort of self-activation or behavioural changes is something that we used to talk about 30 years ago, and the sector has sort of lost it. And I'm glad I'm starting to. I think people are recognising it more now, and also the notion that actually physical activity is just the root. It's actually the mental well-being benefits and social connection that are the things that people get out of the benefits that get out. And I'm interested really in how you think how healthcare professionals could advise leisure professionals as to what we have to do different in order to make life more comfortable for those who might say, I'm not that material.
Yeah, no, really good question. And I think you're absolutely right that behavior change is a really key component. When I first wanted to try to promote physical activity amongst my patients, I set up group consultations where I actually spent the time teaching them about physical activity. I told them sort of what these are the health benefits, these are the impacts it does on your body, and yeah, I think they found it quite useful, but I don't think it really made a difference because they already knew that.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll find many people, if you pulled them off the street and said, regular physical activity, is that good for you? I don't think anyone would say, oh no. And I suddenly realized that I had to make a change, and instead the group consultations became all about behavior change and all about equipping them with the skills and knowledge, whether you're using the COMB model, that's the capability, opportunity, motivation, or another. It's around trying to allow the person to realize what it will take and what steps they need to make, and just breaking it down really small. And so if I'm speaking to someone in the physical activity sector and maybe approaching patients that do have a number of long-term conditions and may not be very active, you have to realize that the baseline is lower than you think. Even if you are experienced and you kind of have an idea, it's lower.
Yeah.
That's what I realized. Because I just set up like a gentle walk with many of these patients, and we didn't get further than about 500 meters at the slowest pace. I honestly, I cannot describe how slow it was. And that's when I woke up and realized this is where they're starting. No wonder they're finding it hard to access any group or go to any session, because just walking at a very gentle pace, that's them done.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that instead of assuming the barriers and assuming where the patient is at, just find out, get the patient to lay it out and to be open and honest with them as to kind of the challenges that they'll face, but that we've got the delayed reward. They're not going to feel great after the first session, nor after the first few. Yeah. But you're trying to explain that there's a delayed gratification there, that eventually once they start noticing the benefits, they start feeling stronger, it will then become more self-motivating. But that takes time. It takes a lot of time. And so early on, what I try to do is look to weave in other benefits that they can achieve much earlier, that I get them to be aware of. So for example, some of them will come and say, I'd really like to walk for half an hour without stopping. I'm like, okay, that's brilliant. That will take probably 8 to 12 weeks minimum. So what can I get them before that? So we form a walking group, and for the 5 minutes beforehand, we always have a chat, we have a discussion, and then at the end for 10 minutes, we again have a chat, discuss things. We try to make socials, make it fun. We play some sort of interesting games and quizzes, because I want them to get the benefit of the community aspect. So therefore they come back the next week, not because they want to do the walk, 'cause they haven't yet enjoyed the walk. It's still pretty horrendous. But they'll enjoy meeting up with the people that they've just met. They'll enjoy playing the games, listening to the music, that kind of stuff. So think about how you can weave in enjoyment early on to keep them engaged and keep them connected with physical activity. And then the last thing I'd say is, when it comes to kind of understanding where they're at, there's something that we are undefeatable. The Richmond group of charities, their campaign, they did research, which they only published last week, which is called The Big Talk. And this is where they did a survey amongst healthcare professionals and amongst patients to find out what did each perceive the barriers were for the patient. And you'd think that we'd probably identify the barriers that the patients would pick up, but we didn't. Like our top 5 and the patient's top 5 were different.
Wow.
And for clinicians, we thought that the reasons that they wouldn't be active was motivation and finances. Those were the two top things. But for patients, it was pain and it was fatigue. Right. And so it's that lack of awareness of what it's like to live with those conditions. And you may think, Hussain's focusing a lot on long-term conditions, but in reality, 40% of our population has long-term conditions. And that number's going to increase. It's going to increase massively. And I was on a call earlier this week where 2 members of government actually were discussing, and they've realized that a big reason, you'd think that they would have come to this conclusion a lot earlier, but a big reason why we're seeing high rates of sickness, in particular in young people, why we're seeing people with 4+ long-term conditions before they're 60, is because of physical inactivity. They seem surprised. They were talking as if like they just worked it out, like they cracked it, and I'm just like, really? Really? Like you've only come to that conclusion now? We're 20% less active than the 1960s. And we weren't exactly particularly active then.
No. And we can say, was that the Fit for Office initiative or something? Was that?
They're different, but
right.
the Fit for Office was was myself and two of my colleagues, Dr. Hassan, who's a lifestyle consultant psychiatrist, and Dr. Fleming, who's a health and wellbeing coach. We went into the House of Commons to meet with the MPs and the staff of their teams to speak about the importance of being active and staying physically active for their own health. And how we guided it is we had consultations with them to try to improve their physical activity and realize how it can support their health, because then that's how they are going to think about its importance for their constituents.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a UK Active initiative, was it?
UK Active, yeah, absolutely. It went down really well, and I was really glad to see the MPs speak about it and be honest around how at the moment, like the way our lives are laid out, physical activity is kind of engineered out in every opportunity.
Absolutely.
It just makes it more of a challenge when it should be much easier to do.
Exactly, and I think UK Active are doing some great work with Kenny Butler, but Mike Farrar's sort of leadership. I mean, we're all hoping it's like, come on, Mike. He's hopefully going to be our sort of flag bearer and make those connections. He's already got 5 ICBs to agree to open up and work with us in a much more open and sort of collaborative way as well. So
for sure, if anyone can, Mike can. Like he's over his career, he's shown his ability to bring teams together and collaborate across sectors. So I'm hopeful as well. Yeah,
good. So we've mentioned it a couple of times, but the active practices. So Dave Monkhouse, who made our introduction, got us on a call, got you on a call, and we were very interested to hear about that. So could you tell us a little bit about the active practices, please?
Yeah. So launched in 2019. The Active Practice Charter was a sort of a call to arms for practices to start to embed physical activity within their service. And it's made up of 5 criteria, but you can split them into 3. So one criteria is about increasing physical activity for both patients and staff. Mm-hmm. The second one is to decrease sedentary activity for patients and staff. And the final one is around partnering with a physical activity provider. Because at the end of the day, not all GPs are going to become personal trainers like myself or become, into physical activity as I have. But there is a massive pool of knowledge and experience, normally within a few miles of the practice. They just need to reach out and connect with that. That may be a personal trainer in the local area. It may be a very large leisure centre. It may be a community group, let's say an athletics club. We don't need to fix those problems. They've already found solutions for it. We just need to support them in getting patients from our consultation room, our waiting rooms, to those facilities. Let them do what they're good at, and let us also do what we're good at in terms of actually helping and preparing the patient to support them on that change. We may not be delivering the session or know how it is delivered, but we do know about behavior change. We do know how to equip our patients with knowledge. We do that with the medical model. We just need to start equipping them with physical activity. And in my local area, in Leamington, we've seen really, really great benefits from partnering with local providers, and we've got the whole sort of menu of options, from Everyone Active, who runs our local gym, to we have free personal trainers that support us with sessions varying from strength sessions to spin classes to exercises specifically for those that are over 55 with flexibility. And we have learned so much from the expertise over the last 5 years of them collaborating with us. And they're seen as extensions of our network. They're seen as our staff, and they're on our website. When you go to meet the team, they're there.
Wow.
We give them our T-shirt and our uniform just to make it clear to the patients that, these guys, we have checked them out. We work collaboratively with them. They do great work. They understand what our mission is. And then that gives the patient that kind of confidence and reassurance that their surgery has sort of reviewed and has got this as the priority. So back to the active practice, it's a simple process to form on. You need to hit those 5 criteria that I outlined. And once you do, you then apply. And if you have done enough work, and the key message here is that sometimes people would apply saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to contact that. You won't get through with that, you know.
Yeah.
It's once you've done and you've embedded it and you've shown that this is permanent.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not just we went on a walk, you know, we did it once, it was great. Or it's not just that we had one taster on this, which we did at the local gym. We want to see how this is going to be sustainable and ongoing. And so we've got now, I can't remember the exact number, but it's over 300 practices across the UK signed up to the Active Practice Charter. And for many practices, if they find it hard to jump onto that step, that's where the Parkrun Practice Initiative is there. And that's just about signposting and connecting with the local parkrun. And for that, we have nearly 2,000 practices that are signed up. And just to give you an idea, there are 6,000 practices in the UK.
It's not bad.
So yes, not bad, definitely for the parkrun practice. And when it's a soft touch like that, obviously there is a lot of interest, and that was good to see. But I think it shows the barriers that are currently in place, that we've only got 300 for that can achieve the charter status. And I see, hopefully, with the way things are going in terms of how GPs are wanting to train and the embedding of more lifestyle medicine within it, that should go up. That should definitely.
And can we help? I mean,
that was my question.
I mean, it's just like,
what can we do?
It's like the
encourage that.
The manna from heaven from our sector's point of view over the years has been how do we make the link? And then it was interesting on the call and now today, it's like, well, these practices want to link with us.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised on the call that even though SIMSPA, UK Active Sports England were on your website, it was still not really easy for those practices to make that connection with our sector. We need to do better, surely. But in terms of helping maybe convert those from 300 to the 2,000 plus,
please,
how can we help?
The fifth criteria, the partnering with a physical activity provider, is by far and away the biggest hurdling block for practices. We get the most questions around it, going, oh, you know, how do I do it? What do I do? You know, how do I know if these guys have got the right qualifications? How do I know if they are able to look after our patients? There's just so much confusion. Sometimes that leads to inaction.
Yeah.
And no, definitely. How could he help? Clarity. I know SIMSPA have really helped in terms of giving clear direction as to what training is required. Yeah. And they are going to be improving our website going forward to give that clarity. So therefore, someone that doesn't have much experience within the sector can look at it and go, okay, fine, they've got that qualification.
Right.
They can cover my patients. Also, like a map, an interactive kind of map of that they can assess and be like, okay, what's in my local area? Yeah. You know, what's currently... and also the contact details for them, because as you must know, it's probably very hard to contact practices and hospital trusts, because it's the emails that you have are always the generic ones, and it lands in a mountain of other emails and gets ignored. But if we had a way, like a contact in each institution that you think would be great to then connect, so therefore you know that if you're a healthcare professional, you look at this map, this is my local leisure centre, this is the contact for the liaison, or whatever you want to call it, the sort of conduit between the two. That would be fantastic. And that's kind of the reason why we developed the Active Practice Charter Map. So for, let's say, those of you that are listening that want to connect with an active practice already, because they unlikely want to sit still. They want to keep developing and improving. If you go on the Royal College of GP's Physical Activity Hub, we have on the homepage, there's a map. You can click the link, search to see where your nearest one is. And then on each one, there's a contact. Yeah. Reach out to that. They're the champion for that practice, for the initiative. And just because they've achieved the status, I would say that these are probably the best places to try and do more. You know, how can you reignite and develop what they're doing yet further and provide them with options? Because once they realize the benefits that you can bring, they'll keep asking you for more. You know, that's what's happened in my area. It started very small, and like an onion, like we just keep layering it. And like now we have, I think off the top of my head, it's something like 8 or 9 providers that we have access to. We have a menu of options. When we speak to patients, we even like get them to have a look at it. We lay it all out on the table. We say, what's your thing? You know, is it Tai Chi? Is it the 12-week gym based stuff at Everyone Active? Is it this swim group that we've got going? Is it this walking group? And that way the patient can have a look and decide for themselves, you know, what is it that they want to try? And because together you become a funder's dream. Like the amount of funding that we have gained over the last 5 years collaboratively with our partners has been massive. Because when you're coming and you're coming combined, physical activity provider, healthcare, saying that, look, this is our mission. We want to, for example, support people with high blood pressure through physical activity. This is our plan. It's a win-win for the council or for the active partnership or wherever you're seeking that funding from. And I think we've got like an 80% success rate on funding applications.
Right.
That's because it's everything that they want. It's everything that they want. Integrated work between what is normally siloed sectors. And you're able to bring different things. And I think that's what's so beautiful. It's like the healthcare sector and the physical activity sector, we both have the same outcome in terms of improved blood pressure, improved type 2 diabetes, improved osteoarthritis. Yet we bring different things, which is what's so good when we work together. And I think some other collaborations, there isn't a natural kind of demarcation of kind of what our roles are, but this we have. Like, it's really clear. Like, no one's going to step on anyone's toes. You're not going to find the nurse starting to go for a HIIT session with them. Do you know what I mean? So, like, it's a beautiful collaboration that when you get it set up, it can just do its thing, and the patients benefit from it.
And just picking up on that, the SIMSPA and the sort of credibility of the qualifications and the sort of understanding what all the qualifications mean and all the rest of it. Do you think that there's more work to do on that, or is it more a case of just making it very clear? Yeah,
I think the work's there, because once like I was made aware and did the research and went through it, you realise it's there. People have put in a lot of hard work to bring that clarity, but I think presenting it in a way that someone with no experience in the sector can just look at it and be like, okay, these are the things I need to look for. A sort of a dummies guide essentially for us, because they have the time to go through the nuances and look through the history of it and how it's developed. They just want to know, like, what qualifications do I need to look for? What does what mean? And also they need it on a platform that they get, because they're not going to the SIMSPA website. They've never even heard of it, if I'm being honest. They haven't heard of it. So having that on, for example, the Royal College of GP's website, but actually written by people that know what they're doing, aka SIMSPA, that's the gold. That's where they can look at it and be like, okay, that's what I need. That's how I need to assess. Just for an example, I had a call, I think it was just yesterday. There's a group in Stratford that are going to start a dance group for people with dementia, which I think is fantastic for the care and the dementia, because we know that music can be a really great way for people with cognitive difficulties to re-engage. But they were struggling to work out, like, what does the dance instructor need to have for it to be okay from my side? Like, what insurance do I need to make sure they have, and X, Y, 4? And I explained it to them, but for many, they won't have my number, and I really hope they don't, because I can't field all the phone calls. So having places where they can just understand this and break it down, it will help. Because I promise you that the fact that it's hard to work out for a healthcare professional will lead to inaction, and people will just put it on the back burner, because this is never the number one priority. Always the number one priority is get through your clinic. So if the number two priority is hard work, it's less likely to happen. So we just need to make it as frictionless as possible. Co-design. 100%.
I'm intrigued by technologies all around, as you mentioned, websites and all sorts, but of course it goes beyond that. We're dabbling a little bit with AI and triaging and things like that. I'm intrigued as to what your thoughts about how we can use technology maybe to broker some of these relationships or improve the accessibility of services or those types of things. Where's technology fitting in for you?
Like, technology is always a double-edged sword. In many ways, it's the blame of a lot of the inactivity that we currently see. But when it's brought in for good, it can really help. I think technology can help to bridge the gap for the patient journey. If I use the example, for the last 12 months, we set up a swim group called Swim Together, which was a joint project at my primary care network, the local leisure centre, Everyone Active, Mental Health Swims and Swim England. And it's all around getting people with long-term conditions to access the water and the benefits that brings. And for sort of the first 12 months, we had a lot of challenge, because getting the sort of patient details and sort of the process from our system onto their system and sort of having to complete, let's say, referral forms like you have to do often on sort of, activity on referral, it just adds in layers. That means that if you're a time poor GP, And having to think that, okay, I'm going to have to bring this up with the patient, find out, try and go through a bit of behavior change, motivational interviewing, then I need to complete a form, then I need to, like, it can be enough to be like, okay, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, you know, to 10 minutes are up.
Yeah.
And it sounds silly, but even friction like that is enough to mean that it doesn't happen. But now, through a lot of collaborative work and utilizing technology in terms of the platforms that Everyone Active uses and what we use, we've now got a really easy way for patients to just automatically go through. So it can be as simple as, I speak to a patient, we engage and we think, okay, this is a good idea. I then send them a text, which is literally one click because it's already inbuilt, the template's there, I don't need to write anything. That takes them over to the Everyone Active app, and then they have a specific area within the app, which others can't see if they didn't get the text, but then allows them to access these swims that is funded because we got funding for these patients to attend it. And then it just makes everything smoother. And suddenly, with that happening, numbers just skyrocket. And we're now full. We've got like 3-4 month waiting list. And it just shows that. We went from really me constantly emailing GPs going, oh, we've got this service, please refer. To now I'm like, okay, we've got 3 months waiting list, you know. Pick wisely. And so I think technology, if it could be brought in a way to make the patient journey smoother, that's where I think the gold lies. And I know that one of the projects that you may have heard about that I'm working on is around medical clearance and trying to simplify that. I think potentially AI can be very helpful because at the moment, the sort of screening tools that we have for that are so poor. They're so poor. You know, when you compare them to other screening tools that are used, for example, in healthcare, they just don't stack up. And what ends up happening is people that don't need to be checked get sent to us, and it barely even picks the very few people that do need to have medical clearance. So hopefully with the work that we're doing with FSEM and a number of other organizations, and that's the Faculty of Sport and Exercise Medicine, if the listeners don't know FSEM, hopefully we can clear that up, but we're seeing how technology can simplify that process.
I mean, that's really good to hear. I mean, I know it can be sensitive, but you know, there has to be applications for AI around triaging. There has to be applications of AI to use motivational interviewing to get adherence. And you know, I've heard some healthcare professionals push back on that. I've heard others saying, you know, well, let's run and try and make this happen. I'm intrigued
to see. Really. Obviously, we need to test these things out.
Absolutely.
And they will always be tested out. But it'll be wrong not to try to see what benefits it can bring. Like, have you guys heard of Good Boost?
Yes, very much so, Ben.
That's a great example of where AI is helping those with long-term conditions actually access movement, whether that be pool-based or even you know, gym-based. Absolutely, why not? You know, if we've got AI that can give a bespoke physical activity plan for patients that they can engage with, it's a win. Absolutely, it's a massive win because we need to inspire more people to utilize these kind of facilities. You know, it just breaks my heart when you think of the number of pools that are closing down, the gyms that are struggling to get numbers through the door. Yet, you know, when we look at the nation's health, this is probably, these places need to be full. You know, these places need to be rammed. We need to be building more. I don't want to hear about these places closing down. I want to hear about them opening up in new and innovative ways with modern technology integrated in it. And it's the same with the friction argument. We need to make it as easy for people to access, and that also comes on cost. And one thing that I've been campaigning for ages is around VAT for this kind of stuff. You know, it's madness. You know, physical activity is not an extra. When you're physically inactive, it harms your health. And currently in our population, half of women and a third of men are physically inactive to a degree where it's significantly harming their health. And that's not right. And we need to, on every level, make it easier for them to get active. And for the places and institutions and people that are helping people get active, we need to actively help for that. You know, we need to make the environment as accessible as possible for them to do the good work. We've done it before in lots of other sectors. We need to do it here as well.
Excellent. Just going back to the technology one, which is fascinating, and John's right. We've got in GM Active, we've got the Pre-Ad for Cancer program. We work with our clinical colleagues up there, and they're looking at sort of wearable technology. They're looking at triage as we go from prehab from 2,000 people a year to 20,000 people a year. We need technology to help and all the rest of it. And even there, where we work with them and we're commissioned by GM Council and all the rest of it, we've had to sort of say, look, work with us. Don't go and do it over there. And then, because it's absolutely applicable to lots of other things that we're doing. Do you think, and I'm thinking of a UK Active hat on here, and Dave Gerish who's their digital guy. Do you think there's something that we could do together and sort of co-design all of the things that we're talking about here in terms of technology? Or is that already happening? Or is there a danger that, if you like, the clinical side are working on things and we're working on things and the two aren't meeting together as well as they could do at the moment? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any piece that's been done at the moment in terms of sort of bridging all those gaps. And I think it's vital that it's co-designed. Okay. Very much so. Because otherwise, as you say, and what ends up happening a lot in healthcare in the UK is when these things are designed in silo, they are great at doing what they are designed for, but then outside of that, they desperately struggle. Yeah. And the amount of different systems that we've got for all the various stuff that we have to do, different logins, and it just shows that this sort of patchwork approach, it never works, because then invariably the amount of stuff that's come and gone over like a 5-6 year period is massive in the NHS. Yeah. Programs are like, oh, this is the next thing, you got to do this, start doing this, and then 5-6 years later it's gone. Yeah. So if we want something to last and we want it to be as effective as possible, 100% we need to collaborate on that.
There's an idea we'll take away and see what we can do. We could talk for hours, but we're going to move on to our last 3 stroke 4 quickfire questions, which don't necessarily need to be quickfire answers, but the quickfire questions.
I'll try.
So the first one is there's going to be a new government this year. In terms of relation to what we've talked about, what would you want? One thing you could choose for them to do, to prioritise, what would it be?
That's a very good question. Just one. Okay. I would say, if there's just one, and if I'm focusing on my sector in healthcare, that would be bringing in physical activity training and awareness within medical school. Right. And not just 4 hours. Like, I want a big chunk. And I'd actually want to see the physical activity sector going in and delivering some of those sessions full. Because the lecturers definitely won't know what they're talking about. So that's what I'd love to see. I'd love to see it being done in university. And I promise you, it would be one of the most welcomed and liked amongst medical students. Right. For sure they want it. For sure. And they're starting to ask why they don't have it at the moment. That's the thing. Before, back in my time, we didn't know better. Like, we didn't know any different. Yeah. So we didn't know that what we were missing. But now, and in particular with a lot of lifestyle GPs going onto social media, trying to advocate for the importance of these kind of things, a lot of new medical students that are going through that have maybe watched some of the content, started to realize that they want it. They want it reflected in the training. They don't want to just learn about it on Instagram. And so that's what I'd love to see. I'd want to see it properly embedded within medical school and taught properly.
Super.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
Mine's a bit of a paradox question. Yeah. So, what really excites you about the opportunities for the future, but also what might make you fearful?
What excites me is the fact that the physical activity sector are probably the better prepared than they've ever been to accept and start to bring in healthcare related patient flow. And I think we're starting to see a physical activity sector that's a bit bolder, that's starting to make more approaches, that's starting to realize that they could start to really push the boundaries of what they thought was okay before. I've seen that in my area, the amount that have sort of started and sort of approached me with ideas. I think that's great. And I hear about it when I look through my colleagues and the network through the whole of the UK. You're seeing more and more physical activity providers approaching healthcare professionals and coming up with really innovative things. There's great examples across the UK. At the moment, they're just examples and they're just, gold standards. I want to see it as a norm. I don't want to be a postcode lottery where you hope that your practice has done these things. And that's what's starting to happen, because a lot of patients sometimes contact me through the various channels and they go, why doesn't my practice do that? Yeah. And if we get enough practices doing it, the other practice will have to do it.
Yeah.
Patient power.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need to try to inspire more. Patience. If this is something you want, if you want support on getting active, if you want support to eat well and etc., you need to ask for it. Just ask for it politely. Just ask for it politely at your practice. So they start to realize that that's what you want. When I first started this whole thing, before it even began, many of the team in my practice said, patients don't really want this. Do you know what I mean? Patients aren't interested. No one's going to come to your walking group. No one's going to come to the jogging group. Like now, we get 30 to 50 people coming. And we don't even advertise anymore. Like they do want to come. Everyone wants to get active. New Year's resolution, nearly everyone's New Year's resolution is I want to be a bit more active. Clearly the motivation is there. It's just the environment isn't there. When you mention sort of what's that negative, it's the environment we live in. You may have heard the term obesogenic environment, but a term that I think we should start using is osteosarcopenic obesogenic environment, because we're not just got extra weight, but we actually, as a nation, we're under-muscled, and we have got poor bone density. And that's all related to a lack of movement, because we know that movement, in particular weight-bearing movement, improves bone density and protects it from declining quickly as we age. And when you think of muscle bulk and muscle strength, like that's not about the visuals. Like our muscles are probably the most important metabolic organ, even more so than the liver. They store glucose as glycogen in there. And so even how, let's say, two individuals eat the same meal, if one has higher muscle bulk than the other, how that meal is metabolized is completely different. How much of that meal will then turn into fat is different. And so we need to start to realize that it's not just weight. Weight isn't the only thing. We need to think about the whole picture. We need a body that is strong, got good muscle bulk, and that is active and that is moving, because that's what's going to protect them. And although life expectancy, although it has dropped, unfortunately, in the last few years, as testament to this, let's say life expectancy is pretty high, but our health span is not. The number of years that we're living with a poor quality of life, with health conditions, that's higher. That's not right. It's not right that countries like Costa Rica have a better health span than us. They spend a fraction of what we do. A fraction. It's embarrassing. And so that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about if we don't tackle this environment, if we don't shift the benefit from being fast food restaurants to actually supporting physical activity sector, which is providing benefit, I just think that's mad. That we're getting that. We need to tax these places and then help subsidize the places that are helping our health. Because for every pound that you spend on the physical activity sector, you will get more back. I think Mike mentioned a figure of like £4 back.
It's 1 to 4,
It's a 1 to 4, That's incredible. That's an investment. Even if you didn't care about physical activity, care about the numbers.
Absolutely.
So that's my fear, is that won't be addressed, and that we need to shift it away from, you look at the high street, everything on there pretty much is going to cause you harm in one way or another, and that's a massive shame. That's a massive shame.
Good answer.
I love the passion.
I'm looking forward to watching this recording.
I just love the passion. So the final quick fire before we ask you to maybe suggest somebody for the podcast. The sport and physical activity sector currently sits within DCMS in government. Do you think that's the right place for it, or do you think we should be in Department of Health and probably with OHID, or should we be maybe not in any of them?
Or doesn't it matter?
Oh, that's a good point. Okay, so do you know what? I was in Westminster on Monday. And I was lucky enough to go to 10 Downing Street. And I spoke to the minister, and I also spoke to Rishi, the Prime Minister. Do you know what? I actually talked about this exact thing.
Right.
And I said that it needs to be within the Department of Health. And that's simply because, like, the digital, culture and sport, it's like, what kind of mishmash? It's like the miscellaneous that,
it is.
At the end, it's
it's any other business, isn't it?
Stick it in there.
It's just nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. Because you walk past it as you're going through Whitehall before we go down the street. You walk past it, and I just looked at it. I actually took a photo. I'll show you my phone.
Right.
I took a photo just to remind myself of just how mad it is that it's there. And don't get me wrong, I love sport, but I think the term just physical activity should be used. And in that umbrella, sport's there. Sport's a brilliant way. And for some, it's the way to get active. They need that sport element to kind of enjoy it, whether it's that football team that they go to once a week or whatever. But I think we should use the term physical activity because then it just covers everything. You know, it covers all types of movement. And it needs to be within the Department of Health.
What did he say, by the way?
Well, there's a lot of nodding. There's a lot of nodding. And a lot of the word interesting. So no firm answers, which I think is his go-to. But it's not the first time it's been mentioned as well, I suspect.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So hopefully we will see that happen. And I think it will. Generally, I do think it will. How long it will take, I'm not sure. Yeah. But I think it desperately will. Because it needs to, because that's where the benefits come. You know, that's where the benefits come, and that's what we need to start leveraging it for.
Yeah, with your enthusiasm, I'm pretty sure that you're probably right there. So, very final question. Anybody you can think of who you think we should talk to about this subject?
Really good question. Now, I suspect you probably get a lot of people within the physical activity sector. So I'm going to go from the healthcare sector.
Excellent.
Okay?
Please.
And what I think would be brilliant would be Dr. Callum Leese. Okay,
Yes.
so he is based in Scotland, in a place that I can never pronounce, so I'm not going to. And he is the young generation. He's actually a GP trainee. So
He's on your podcast, isn't he?
Yeah, he is on the podcast. And what I love about him is that he has really delved into the research behind why we don't utilize physical activity in healthcare.
Right.
He will give you some really useful insights as to why we don't.
Excellent.
And what are those kind of barriers, which I think will be really beneficial for your listeners. He's also really keen and advocate for physical activity in his own life. And so I'll bring him on, and I would really try to get him to open up about the research. You know, that's his
Wonderful,
bread and butter.
wonderful.
I mean, that's great, actually. I mean, one of my favourite phrases that I've been using for years and years, and I haven't found, but I'm going to talk to him because he's probably got the answers, is, as physical activity professionals, we need to understand the reasons why people don't exercise rather than why they do. And
Exactly. Because I think sometimes, and even now, I fall into the trap. Because we love movement.
Absolutely.
We love being active.
Yeah.
So are they mental? Are they crazy? But all I have to do is look back to when I first started. And even before I started, I tried many times to get active in my life. Like many times. Like both sort of kind of during school, during uni, when you go to uni, you realise I probably need to bulk up, you know, at that point, and for whatever reason that was for.
Yeah.
And I would always do it for, let's say, 2-3 weeks, and I'd stop. And it was always because for me at least, my goals were the wrong things.
Yeah.
There were things that were really hard to achieve and take years to achieve. And so when after, let's say, 3-4 weeks, I hadn't made any real progress to them, you go, well, this is really hard. What's the point? You know, what am I gaining? I don't look any different, etc. And as soon as I removed the aesthetics, as soon as I removed the kind of artificial goals that like I'd come up with, because that's what society said was good movement, suddenly you can engage with it in a different way. You know, as soon as I was wanting to move to just feel a bit fitter, to try to improve my health, it just became that bit easier. But it still was difficult. It still took, I'd say, probably about 6 or 7 weeks before I wanted to go on either that run or that cycle. It really did take that long. Before that, it took a lot of dragging myself, you know, persuading myself, failed attempts even still in that week. So we need to realise that there's that difficult patch. And it's all around that kind of delayed gratification and instant gratification. Nowadays, we have access to so much instant gratification. It's what our brain likes. Our brain likes to get gratification. It's safe. It's great. So physical activity, you get delayed gratification. You don't get that instant feeling. When you start being active, your brain actually tells you, oh God, this is quite difficult. Why move? And once you develop it longer and longer, even physiologically changes happen for you to access that gratification sooner. So like no one gets a runner's high in the first, let's say, 6 weeks of running. Like it doesn't happen. But then after a few months, I remember this feeling going, this is weird.
Yeah.
Like I'm running, it feels effortless and it feels amazing.
Yeah.
Like this doesn't feel like I'm dying. Yeah. And I think that's what we need to realize and also prepare the patient for. To say that, look, it's normal that you're not enjoying this to start off with, that it's difficult.
Yeah.
Because they look on Instagram, they go, oh God, these guys seem to be enjoying Ironmans and they're enjoying marathons and they're smiling. I just don't do that. I don't engage with that. I try and it's difficult. Well, they don't realise that takes a while to develop.
Yeah,
it takes a while to develop. So we need to be mindful of that.
Yes, brilliant. Good point. Thank you very much. I'll be in touch with Callum for sure. We're actually hosting a Scottish Leisure Network Group panel next
Brilliant.
month, actually. So if he's available and he's willing, that'd be
I'll
great
make sure he
too.
is. I'll make sure he is.
Excellent, wonderful, great. Well, listen, thank you so much. We knew it was going to be good, but it's surpassed all expectations. So thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me.
No, you're very welcome, and best of luck with everything you're doing.
And thank you for the support of the principle of physical activity.
No problem. I'm going to be around for a while, hopefully. So I'll keep it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.